Hi, I'm Lindy Witt and welcome to the studio. Today I just want to talk about how it's quite possible to do a painting entirely from your imagination, and often I don't have my photo up there because the painting I'm doing is taking up the whole screen, and some of my viewers get a bit antsy about that. But this is to demonstrate that you don't actually always need a photo to be painting from. This is left over from yesterday when I was teaching someone and just drawing various elements on this sheet of paper to demonstrate shadows in cliffs, light sources on trees, how to get a summer sky. And I'm just going to take that and rework it into a painting from my imagination. So we'll see how good that turns out to be. Okay, let's get cracking. What I've got myself here to start with is a summer sky, a little bit of a headland in just one colour, some sea, a cliff and a bit of vegetation there. And I can rework this into a painting if I just think about the composition a bit. So what I'm going to do is get myself a little bit of a pastel and do a slight drawing on there, just a neutral kind of warm neutral. And I'm thinking about how I might do it. So the cliff's coming down here. I'll keep that cliff there, but it will need to have, I think what I'm going to do is make those trees on a sort of bit going down there and have a path coming in like that up the hill. So make a path coming down from around the cliffs there, around here, down to the beach. So that will help to tie in the fact that I've got cliffs, I've got some trees, and now I'm going down to the beach because I need to get down to that area. I'm going to make that sand and maybe put some waves on the sea there. So that was just a quick idea. The cliffs I'll just keep going with, and as I was explaining to the person I was teaching yesterday, it doesn't really matter what colours. I don't really need a photo to do this from. I'm just putting in some darks here, all sorts of darks. Here I've got some purple coming into it, some browns. I just want to get all the darks in there for the shadows on the cliff. And because this is over in the corner of my painting and I don't want the viewer's eye to run out of it, I'm going to make that low area there quite dark. I'm putting in reds, I'm putting in purples, I'm putting in browns, just to get that worked in. I've got a lot of the cream coloured paper showing through, which doesn't do a great deal for the darks there, but I'm just going to keep going in with those darks and using the pastels that I'm using there to push the pigment into the paper there. And just adding a little bit of a few linear marks there just to help differentiate the rocks. So it's quite dark there. What I want to do now is put in some highlights, but before I go any further with those cliffs, that's really just to give me a guide. I'm going to do a little bit of that path there just to work out where I'm going to put it in. So I think I'll take it back that way a little bit. I don't want it to come so sort of around the base of the cliffs there. So I've got some vague idea about it. And I'll need to put something in at the base of the cliffs there. And I think what I'm going to do is put some highlights on the edges here. Sun's coming from that direction, so I'll just do some highlights down. And down here, I'm going to make some lower areas of rock so that the path's coming around next to these lower areas of rock there. And I'll probably take that back out again. Give that one a little edgy highlight. So you can be a little bit bold with the lights that you're putting in here. I could go for some oranges. I'm making it up. I don't have to have any reference to the actual local colour, which is the colour that I would see if I was there, the actual colour of it. So what I'm going to do, I like the orange against the blue there, so I'm making the tops of those cliffs there orangey coloured. And down there as well. So I'm getting those cliffs set up there now. I may put in a few lighter purples, bluey sort of purples in amongst those shadows as well, so it's not just all the really darks. And that set up my clips. No, sorry, shouldn't be blowing, that's bad practice. There's no need for me to have a photo to do that. I can just draw on my memory of what cliffs look like. So cliffs are in. I'm going to do the water coming in there now, in towards the beach there. And what I'm going to do is actually give it a little bit of an angle there, not have it coming in straight, just to give a little bit of a chance for a little direction going on in the painting. So just putting in the lighter colours, waves there. And I can come back to that shortly. That's just to get me going. And then some warm sort of colours for the beach. Oops. That's what happens when you use a dirty pastel. So I'm putting in some warm colours. I want to put in a sort of a purpley colour right here where the water and sand meet, because you get a little dark area there where the sand is wet. And I'm taking my finger and just rubbing it in. Now, I don't need a photo to tell me that, I know, and I'm sure you know from being down at the water's edge that the sand's darker where it's wet. So I'm just using my experience to guide me here. And I know that that's how it should look, a bit darker there. And then as it comes up the beach, I can add in some more lights. I'm putting in some pinky colours as well. And where this is coming up the path, I'm just going to add in some of the sand colours there, because where it first starts to come up, it's going to be some sand from the dunes. And I'm going to come around there, and some sort of sandy colours coming in there. I've lost the path, but I'm going to reinstate it soon. What I want around the base here is some sort of vegetation, because I don't want the sand coming right up to the base. So I'll be then taking some dark greeny sort of colours and just making some sort of green colours there. I'm going to put a little bit up in here as well, where it's sort of in a crack growing. And so I don't need the photo again for that, because I know from looking at cliffs that in the cracks dirt collects and you end up getting little bits of vegetation growing there. So I'm just using a few greens to do this. Gathering myself up a few greens. They might have a little bit of other colours in amongst them, so I want some lighter greens to show out against the darks there. So just putting in some highlights. Sun's coming that way. So again, don't need the photo, because I've set up the direction of the sun, which is coming from that direction, so I know it's hitting on the cliffs, sort of coming in obliquely there. And I know that that's what I need to do. I'm just putting in a few touches of really rusty colours in that vegetation as well. I want it to be even darker, so I'm looking for a really dark colour. That's a very dark green there. And I'm just scrumbling it in with the side of the pastel. I just want to get some contrast there in that area and keep it still fairly dark. in some contrast. And then I'm just going to go back in with the lighter green, the contrast. And I may even get another one from my mixed greens box that I've made myself. So I've just used a box that I got some other unison colours in, which I've mixed in with my main set, and then I've pulled out a lot of greens from various sets and made myself a greens box. And then it's quite easy when I want to get in and find a particular sort of green. And here I'm looking for a yellowy green. Just put some more highlights in, and then I'm going to look for a very light green, and that's quite a light. It's a very cool green, so I'm just going to put a few dabs of the cool, and then I'm going to look for one that's a little bit warmer. And I talked about this as well with my student yesterday, how you need to vary up the warms and the cools to get the interest going in your painting. So I'm going back in with some more lights down in this area, just to give me a bit of interest. A couple of different, some cooler ones, and some, you can see those lights are quite yellow in colour. So now I've put a bit of interest here down at the base of that cliff for my track to come around, and I need to do some more work here. I need to do some more work out here. I'm doing this in a very cat-handed way, not the way I would normally approach it, but I'm doing it that way because they're the elements I had when I started. So back here on the headland, I need to give that a little bit more interest, and I want to keep it bluer and cooler because it's in the background. I want it to recede and not come forward. So I'm just taking some pastel. Sort of, it's a shade of ultramarine, and just keeping the colours sort of greyed off and bluey coloured back there, but giving it a slight amount of interest. I'm putting a few different colours in. I want to have a shoreline along there, so I want something that's lighter but not white going along there for the shore. So I'm just taking it's not quite white, it's a hard pastel. I'm just giving it a little drag along there in a rough sort of fashion to approximate the inlets and little bays that will be happening over on that headland there. So I don't need to touch the sky. I'm happy with that. I've got my headland in. I now want to think about the water here, and I'm going to put in some aquas in there as well. A few different colours in the water, just to get a little bit of variety as it comes in closer to shore. So I'm just running a few turquoisey aqua colours through there. And here's a deeper, sort of a greenier one. And I know from being down at the beach on a sunny day that you pick up the greens in the water more than you will in winter. So I've put those in, and I just want to go back and reinstate some of the darker blues out towards the horizon, so, and a couple of touches of them in amongst the other. So I've got a bit of variety going in my water now. What I need to do is put in some wavelets there now, so I'm just getting some paler, quite pale bluey colours. snapping that one in half so it will work better. And a few little wavelets coming up the beach there. So now I've got a sense of the waves coming in. I've got the beach. I need to fix up this area there. I might actually do something out here to add a bit of interest. I'm just taking my finger now and smoothing a little line along the line of the horizon to give it that hazy look you get there sometimes. And I'm going to do that to the headland as well. Just sort of smoothing it off a little bit where it meets the sky to give it that hazy look. So to add a bit of interest out there, I could actually pop in, sorry about my head, I could actually pop in a couple of little sailboats. And that gives me path coming around, out to the beach, back to the sailboats, and then maybe I'll put some birds in the sky. I don't want to go too overboard, but I need to think about this vegetation here now. So I'm going back in with some darks. And I'm just going to put some of those and build up the vegetation around here as well, pulling it right back. It's quite, you can see that it's difficult to put the dark colours over that lighter sandy area I've got in. And one way to help with that, I don't use fixative very much, but one way to help with that is to put a spray of fixative over that vegetation and over in that corner there. And that will darken just those spots and make your shadows darker if you haven't got the right dark, and it will give me a bit more grit to go in over the top of that vegetation and make it slightly darker too. So now I'm going to keep going into that vegetation. I'll put some bluey greens in there as well, especially on the shadowed sides, and just keep working the greens in there. And let's go. And the darker colours are going over it nicely now that I've got. And I'm mixing up the greens in here, cool ones, and putting in a few cool ones now. I don't want it to be boring. And some blues on the shadowed side. But now I want to start working the non-shadowed side. So I'm going to put some lighter greens, just edging it around like so. On the tops there as the sun just hits the tops, and some of this yellow sort of colour, some yellow gold, yellow green gold colour for the sunlit areas, and I'm just bouncing it on. Sorry about the noise, it's my I don't usually use this one. Bouncing it on to get some highlights and some variation in the leaf pattern. And I'm actually going to put in this ochre kind of one as well, just for some added variation. And this is just, I can do the vegetation any way I like. I don't know what it looks like because it's just an imagined one, and variation in the leaves is what I'm going for, and it can be all sorts of colours, not really an issue. And even some variation in the shadowed side there. Now, what I want to do is create a bit of shadow coming down onto that track now. So I'm taking out some purpley colours, to get some of that, which I'm going to put into the bushes as well. And then I'll be using, so it's a very dark purple I'm using here, quite a dark one. And I'm just scrambling it around in those bushes I've already got in. Maybe a little bit lighter as well. And this is where you get those complementary colours of the yellows and the purples, the greens and those ochre red colours, and it helps your painting to sing a little bit. I'm also going to take some of that over the purples and put into these ones over here. Just tying the painting together a little bit and giving it a little bit of interest in its shadowed areas too. So now I'm going to use some purples to come down the bank there and just make some little shadows on the beach path there. So I'm starting to give that a little bit of form there. Now the other thing I could do to give this more interest is, it's a sunny day, there's sailing out there, there's a lovely beach there. Or where are the people? I could pop some people in and I could just imagine these people and think about what colour would go well with this. They could have maybe an orangey sort of shirt on. Put them down by the water's edge. So there's one person with an orange shirt and give them some purpley sort of pants. And I've got to give them a little head, so I'm going to take something sort of browny colour. So that's one person there. I don't need to have, you know, any real definition to make it interesting. Now I'll give my other person some, maybe a little one down by the water with some yellow clothes on and some dark pants there, and then we're going for a third person, and they might be out in the water there having a bit of a swim with some blue and orange. I'll give them some little legs there. And they all need some hair. Might give that little one a sort of blondie looking hair, and that one some blonde hair too there. So there's a few people down there. And what will make those people a little bit more realistic is if I were to give them some sort of shadows in the sand. Shadows on the water. And that will just make it a little bit more realistic. The other thing that will make it a little bit more realistic is if I give some highlights on their clothes as well. So the dark blue person, I just need to find a very light blue and pop a little bit of light on the back of his shirt. Similarly with this orange one, I just need a very light orange and put a little bit of a highlight there, and the yellow one, it'll be almost white on there. So I've got some people down on the beach. This is an all imagined scene. I've put people out sailing because I know it's a summer's day, there'll be people out there, some people down on the beach. What I can do now, which I hadn't done and which I should do, is put in some birds. Some little seagulls down here. And all I need is a little suggestion of white for the seagulls, and then I can sculpt them slightly with a bit of they look rather big in relation to the people, so they're coming out. You've got to keep a eye on those sort of things. So I just put that. What I will do is put in some birds in the sky, and I'll just use something dark for that. so they stand out well against the... So they're taking off there, going around there, and up there. So there's a few birds. What I need to do is make them not quite so dark now that I've made them dark, so I'm just putting the white over the top of them. So some suggestions of birds taking off, and that gives it all a little bit of life. If I wanted to, I could sit a bird up here or one down here, but I think I'm happy with it. The one thing I might do is just define that path with a little bit more vegetation on the edge, sort of coming back into the path there, so that there's a little bit more edging to the path there, and it leads you a little bit more in. And having done that, I just want to put a little bit of sunlight on the edge of it. And I'm going to call that done. Thanks for joining me today, where I've shown you that it's fairly easy to make a reasonably good painting just from your imagination. We don't need to always refer to our photos, references that we have. We don't always need to be outside looking at a view. What we need to do is look into our memory bank and think of the mood we're trying to create, think of a good composition, and then just start putting the pastels on the painting.